Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. JACALYN. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. JACALYN at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and our show today is The Art of Creating Mental Health Wealth. Joining me on this show and every week is a dear friend. We are working together more and more. I am so excited about everything that she's doing. Her name is Jenetta Barry, and she's the founder and creator of the Epiphany process. Let's welcome her to the show.
Hello, Dr. JACALYN. Hello, everybody. Hi.
We were just saying backstage that last week when we met, which I can't believe it's already another week, that you weren't feeling well. My face was a mess. And here we are today, and it's a whole new world.
Absolutely. And using this last week to have a look at what the emotions behind my feeling not so well were connected to. It's been such an interesting journey going, okay, really quite something. So, and I do believe that's why I'm feeling better this week, is because I've been able to express how I'm feeling from the place where that illness was sitting, or the places where they were sitting.
That makes a lot of sense. And Jenetta, it was brought to my attention by one of our team members that possibly the reason why my face, why I had a bout of facial eczema, was because my new book was launching, and there's a chapter in there where I revealed something about myself, and maybe I was feeling uncomfortable, and
it got under your skin. Yeah. I've seen it again and again and again. And it's amazing how when I've addressed it, it's so interesting because this isn't our topic today, but I think it's really important that when I've addressed whatever it is that I didn't even realize I was running, and my body is giving me a message to say, this is where you're harboring it, almost instantly, whatever it is I'm dealing with is gone. It's like, where have you gone?
Where'd you go?
Yes, you can go. I'm not inviting you back, but where did you go?
Yes, exactly. Well, I think that we have to keep in mind, for everyone around the world, we're all going through different things. And when we keep it inside, as I did with my story, and I know you did also, we are not doing ourselves a favor. It's really a disservice. And that's what I feel so strongly about this platform and this show in particular, is that people are able to express themselves through creative means, through the arts, and help to tap into that inner peace that we all really need more than ever. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, my word. I am so passionate about it. I really believe we were created by the Creator. And that means that we're creative beings. And when we're in our creative genius, we're connected to all that is part of the creation. And so when we're expressing ourselves from our seat of creativity, it is nothing short of magical how whatever we're being challenged with at that point in time becomes more open-heartedly manageable.
Yes, I agree with that. And we, just so our audiences, we don't have a guest today, but we have a really interesting topic that might push some people away, because there are some things people really don't like to discuss. And Jenetta, you've been discussing it for years, but we're going to be talking about grief, anxiety, and isolation, and how we can acknowledge if we're in one of those stages or states, and then what we can do to get out of it.
Yes, and also how we can understand how it's been blown up out of all proportion, and to bring that feeling of grief and isolation into a place of balanced, humane understanding that it's something we all deal with at some time in our lives. We're not abnormal, we're not anything but being human. And if this program today does that alone and helps people to understand that it's all okay, there's nothing wrong with you, I believe you and I have done a brilliant job.
Yes, here's to that. And something that I also want to mention is when we think of grief, someone doesn't actually have to die to be grieved for you to grieve. You could be grieving the loss of a relationship or the loss of a job or the loss of how your lifestyle used to be. There's many different things we can grieve over, yes?
Absolutely. I mean, even down to the loss of how you thought about yourself. You might have had a perception that your label was this, that, and the other. And then something happens that kind of shows you may not be that. And one can identify with it so strongly that when that label's torn away like a band-aid, you go into a state of grieving, having lost yourself. There are so many levels of grief. Unbelievable number.
Jenetta, for people who are watching or listening and they're feeling that they're isolated, they're feeling that they're alone, not just acknowledging, yes, I am alone, but they just feel so lonely and so lost and missing something that they used to have or someone they used to have. What are some of the things that they can do to at least take the first step to move forward?
Yeah, the first thing to understand is that we tend to judge that isolation and loneliness. And when we step into that place, it feels like we're the only one that feels the way we do. Although other people might be isolated and lonely, it feels to us that our isolation and loneliness is our unique feeling and that nobody else gets it, nobody else understands. And then that kind of perpetuates the cycle of feeling even more isolated and alone. And again, rather like grieving, isolation and loneliness comes in many, many forms. It's not just a matter of, say, like in lockdown, we had a guest a couple of weeks ago who was, I think it was last week, who was stuck in lockdown as he lost his life partner, his soulmate. And that's a physical isolation. But you can be alone in a crowd. I sometimes have felt more alone surrounded by lots and lots of people. In fact, one of the things that I deal with is when I'm with big crowds of people, I feel very isolated. And thank goodness I've got my process to go, okay, so what perception am I sitting in that I'm expecting of myself or of others or both that's putting me into this perception that I am isolated and alone? And so it's about being able to understand that isolation and aloneness is a part of life. It's a part of being human. And there's nothing wrong with it. Where it becomes challenging is when we don't know how to manage it and it starts controlling us. When that happens, we feel even more isolated and alone and even more out of control. So it's finding the skills and the tools to embrace isolation and loneliness, understand as much as it doesn't serve us, because it doesn't. This is not saying, wow, it's all fabulous. It doesn't serve us. But where equally does it serve us that if we never felt isolated and alone, we would have huge missings in our lives, which would probably make us feel isolated and alone. Bit of a conundrum, but really, if we start seeing the value of what isolation and aloneness gives us, as much as we can still run that list of what it doesn't give us, it's amazing how you can manage it with a more open-hearted understanding and even appreciation. And excuse me, we've just gone into a big storm here in England.
I can hear it, yes. Are you safe?
So, yes, stay safe. It just sounds so awful. So if I'm shouting, you'll know what.
That's okay. Excuse me. You mentioned about you a person feeling isolated and that other people don't understand. So in your experience, is it important that other people understand that? Excuse me.
Well, part of the isolation and aloneness puts us into the perception that other people don't understand. And there's no doubt about it. No other person can really understand what you're feeling because they're not you. Each of our feelings are unique to ourselves. But having said that, when we go into the extreme perception that absolutely nobody really understands, it means that we cut ourselves off from those who are open-hearted, are understanding, have been through similar, and are able to support and nurture and just hold us in that moment of our unique isolation and aloneness. And the moment you've got that understanding, a problem shared is a problem halved.
I love that. So it sounds like when you're feeling this way, there will be people who are not going to understand, but you can search out people who will understand, people who have empathy and compassion, and they've been in a similar situation and can help you get through yours.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely, we put I love my volume dial scenario, but we put the volume dial up when we're feeling isolated and alone, and it makes it feel far worse than it in actuality is. You know how often we worry about something might happen and then this will happen, and then when it comes about, it's nothing like that. It's exaggerated what we were fearful about. Well, the same happens with isolation and aloneness in our darkest hours. It feels far bigger than in actuality it is. So when you can not only reach out to other people who have that empathy and go, oh, I so get you. I mean, how many times have you and I, Dr. JACALYN, gone, oh yeah, I get it, and we share notes and experiences. So when you can find like-minded people, not the ones, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy, because sympathy kind of goes into that place of, oh yes, that's terrible, but at least you don't, and you could be, and you could have no job, you could be out on the street, at least you have your family. That's sympathy. But empathy is when you meet other people who go, I can't even begin to understand how you uniquely feel right now, but I have been through similar, and I have noticed that when I express myself this way or that way, it's helped tremendously. Are you in a place now to want to share that with me? I'm here for you. And you're not trying to fix the person with sympathy. You're not even trying. You're sitting there present, expressing, and then the next thing is to just listen. And you know about that, Dr. JACALYN, being the listening mentor. Just listen. Don't try to fix.
I'm so glad that you brought up these points. How many times have you had a conversation with someone and you're sharing something? How are you doing today? Actually, I'm not doing that well. XYZ happened. Oh, well, that happened, but at least this didn't happen because this happened to me. And imagine if you had to deal with this as opposed to that. You're lucky you have that. And then you just feel like you're not even acknowledged at all.
Well, there's the isolation and aloneness, because it tells the person that they're A, not listening to them. They're B, saying, my problem's bigger than yours, so what are you going on about? I mean, to be candid, even with Jenny, before I got these listening and communication skills fine honed, when I would listen to, I'd say, okay, Jenny, try and tell me what it is you're feeling. This is my daughter, Jenny, who died from suicide when she was 16. And she'd try and tell me, and I would sit there going, but Jenny, everybody feels like that. We all feel overwhelmed, and it's a part of life. So, don't feel overwhelmed. So I was trying to always fix her. And it felt for her that I was brushing over how she truly felt. And in a sense I was, because I was so overwhelmed. What happens is when you don't have those skills to listen and communicate differently, it's so much easier to just go into the at least, but you don't understand, you should and you ought to fix that person so that you can feel okay and you can feel better, because their overwhelm starts overwhelming you when you haven't got those skills.
That is so on point. I love that. And we've got some comments from our dear friend Roland Friedel, who is living life on the wireless rocks platform, and he's in his RV traveling around. He writes, great content, ladies. It's all about active listening. And so many people don't take the time to listen and have no idea how much they miss. Great points, Roland. Thank you.
So true. They're so busy, and often we overexpress ourselves and talk more than we listen because we're scared of judgment. That's the other thing. We're scared that we will be judged. So we have to kind of almost sell ourselves and go, this is me, and listen to me and my point, and this is how I should. So that's another thing that happens in trying to deal with an isolated person.
And it gets to be boring, doesn't it, when a person's always trying to defend themselves, promote themselves, and they don't take the time to actually stop and listen. Yeah. And when you have that opportunity with someone, you remember it, don't you?
You do. You really feel it. It puts a calm and a peace into you, and you feel like you matter.
And we can all think back through our lives when we've had those interactions with people who were genuinely listening to us.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference.
Yeah, even engaging. I would say it's that they're engaging with us, because as much as they're not just listening, that there's an engagement going on. Sometimes they're listening and responding with a look, body language, an action without actually opening their mouths. There's an interactive response going on when a person's engaged in listening and responding in whatever means.
And you make a connection with that person.
You do. You do. I mean, it's amazing how when you start learning how to deal with your isolation, because we all think that it's about fixing everybody else outside ourselves. It's about going out there and people need to listen to me differently and respond to me differently and understand me differently. And I wish they weren't so successful, so judgmental. So whatever the list is that we all run from time to time, by the way, that's the other thing. It isn't them and us. We all do it as human beings because it's part of being human. And when we're in the perception that it's about fixing everything and everybody outside our sphere of influence and within our sphere of influence and outside, we've forgotten, we actually lose our power. We forget that our power is within us. So it's about turning within and seeing where that judgment of not listening to ourselves and not responding to ourselves is sitting. And when you can go into those parts of yourself where you're running that judgment and respond to yourself differently, that internal talk, being able to acknowledge and listen to yourself differently and respond to yourself from a place of open-hearted appreciation. And when you start doing that, it's the most liberating thing. That's why I call my process the Epiphany process, because you literally feel yourself lighten up. It's like I feel so much lighter. You become more enlightened. Now I'm sounding something out of being a Buddhist or out of the Tao, but it really is about going within, inspiring. And going within and working on all the parts that we judge in ourselves that amplify those feelings of isolation. And the moment you step into your truth and your light by loving all the parts of yourself that you judge as being unloved and unlovable, when you start seeing how they are equally as lovable as they are unlovable, and how equally what we perceive as lovable is unlovable. When we can see the equal amount of love and lovable in every part of us, because we live in duality. So when we can understand that both parts of ourselves are an integral part of being a human, and there's no good or bad in it. We're perfect in the imperfection, and we're imperfect in the perfection, that both serve. Then we lighten up on ourselves and cut ourselves some slack, and life becomes enjoyable, and we become lighter, and people are drawn to us. And suddenly you find that people are naturally responding more naturally. They're more, what's the word I want? They're more open to responding from their hearts when your heart opens.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jenetta. We're going to take a break, but I have a question for you, which we may have to discuss when we come back. But is it truly possible to be at peace with yourself all the time, or to be at your peace with yourself more often than not?
Absolutely not. And it's such a wonderful, wonderful question that I can't wait to discuss with you once we come back.
Okay, perfect. So we'll answer that after the break. We're going to take a moment and hear from a couple of our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Thank you.
Meet the modern learner. Like most of us, the modern learner is short on time, on the go, and wants to learn on their terms and device of choice. The key is to meet them whenever and wherever they may be. The solution? Best-in-class content served up by the Engagement mobile learning platform, where the modern learner is at the center of the learning experience. For example, they can receive a text message that alerts them to a new learning module. They simply tap, watch, read and engage, or play a fun learning game. We transform your content into modules that are timely, accurate, academically rigorous, yet engaging and robust. Personality motivators are blended with modern adult learning principles to make it faster and more natural to absorb the content and have fun while learning. Our cutting-edge platform offers something for everyone. It can be an immersive experience where learners explore and engage based on what's relevant to them in that moment, or they can follow a set curriculum, earning badges and tracking points toward a credit or goal, or they can dive deeper into high-value professional content relating to their topic of interest. It's binge learning at its best. All this, along with an entire portfolio of real-time, usable data and KPIs for stakeholders. Imagine, share up-to-the-minute news, enhance current curriculum, build knowledge banks, drive sales, and foster community in the push of a button. To learn more or see a demo, please contact support@engagement.com.
Take a moment.
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 So I've had the privilege of photographing some incredible people over the years, and during each shoot I've asked the subject to close their eyes and take themselves to a peaceful place just for a few seconds. I've found that this really helps to refresh the energy between the camera and the subject. They had an energy that was quite special and quite different from the rest of the shoot. The collection grew, and now it feels the right time to use it for something good. I think it'd be amazing if we could help to raise awareness and involve people in the discussion about mental health. So what we're asking to do is for everyone to upload their own self-portraits. All of these portraits will become part of a massive artwork. I'm really excited to see this project go from hundreds of pictures to thousands of pictures. Essentially, an ever-evolving artwork that says we're all in this together.
Close your eyes and take a moment.
I can't stand myself because I'm not muscular enough. So I said to myself, you're never happy with yourself. It doesn't matter. And that's been a continuous battle with me. So for me, that's my situation. Other people, they have other things. So is it possible to be at peace?
I really love that question. And it gets asked quite often when I talk my work. The thing to remember, and when I got this after I lost Jen, the aha moment for me was profound. I mentioned earlier, we're in a world that operates in duality. You can't have dark without light. In fact, if you look at everything is acyclical. Look at it around. The noise coming out my mouth now is coming in decibels of cycles. And female cycles, the weather cycles, cycles of emotions, brain waves are cycles. Everything is cyclical. And a very good example is electricity. Electricity works in cycles. And if you study a cycle requires equal amount of positive and a negative charge for it to operate. If we take the negative charge out of electricity, guess what happens to electricity? It becomes disempowered. It's a fact. The whole world works like that. And yet what happened was actually quite an interesting one, and it'll lead me to the peace side. About 160 years ago, a man here in UK, in Scotland actually, advocated that it was more important to be positive than negative. So all negative thought, word, and deed needed to be eradicated out of one's psyche, basically. And funnily enough, his name was Sam Smiles. And he wrote a book 160 years ago and advocated it to the learned few. And then post Second World War, Norman Vincent Peale took that belief system and put it in a book in 1952 and published it when people were looking how to get out of the nightmare of war and find that peace, because life felt far from peaceful. So if we look at peace from a bigger picture, and he started advocating that the more positive one can be and the more you get rid of negative thought and deed, the more happier, wealthier, wiser you will be. And that's when he published The Power of Positive Thinking. And as much as it is very important to concentrate a lot on bringing the positive, because by default we tend to concentrate on the negative, it's not the be all and end all, because if we take out all negative, we're disempowered like electricity. And the same thing happens with understanding peace in whatever form it comes in, whether it's world peace or whatever. You cannot, let's stay on world peace for now. You can't have peace without war, and you can't have war without peace, because the two balance each other out in the yin and yang of what I was just expressing. The secret is to bring the both out of extreme into manageability. So, I mean, let's look at it. The United Nations keep peace. Let me put my teeth in again. The United Nations peacekeeping force has one of the biggest armies in the world. They're fighting for peace. Now that's an oxymoron. And if you take away that army, how are they going to keep the peace? Because it takes bringing in the other side of the continuum and those boundaries, those necessary boundaries to create the peace. So all the time, peace and war oscillating on either side of a line of balance. And it's learning how to bring both into a place of manageability that makes peace and war work or become more manageable. I don't know if work is the correct word, but certainly more manageable. And there's an internal war going on in each and every one of us. We're always fighting with ourselves and being the biggest critic that anybody can be. Or most of us are, and even those who've got it in manageability, we're doing it all the time. We're discernment, judgment, decision making, all those different traits are judgment of whether you can or can't or are or aren't or whatever. So when you can bring all those judgmental traits into a place of manageability, you start understanding and accepting and feeling more peaceful about yourself. So always having that ability to look at yourself and say, is this working? Is this not working? Am I looking okay? Am I not looking okay? That's part of being human and about managing the peace and the war inside you. So at the end of the day, it's about taking extreme thoughts and feelings about how you feel about yourself and understanding how loved and lovable you are to bring it into balance.
Thank you. There's a lot to think about there, and it makes a lot of sense.
It really blew me away when I stopped and I went, it's okay when I have moments where I'm really judging myself and maybe they're thinking this about me, or maybe I'm not doing this well enough, or maybe I'm looking 100,000 years old at 63. It's an easy one to step into at the age I am. It's all there. We all do things like that. It's part of being human. And thank goodness I'm now able to step into that place and go, and I go each side using these incredible questions that suddenly you get it and you go, and there's this, oh, I'm okay. I'm all right. And an amazing feeling of acceptance on the journey of understanding that the next thing you're not feeling so peaceful about now has permission to come up to your conscious consciousness from your unconscious consciousness where it's been buried. So it's not about getting rid of the thoughts or feelings of not being at peace with yourself. It's about inviting them to your conscious consciousness and then being able to do something really meaningful with them and understand how valuable and how much they matter, that they are.
Jenetta, you're so good at the work that you do. And at the beginning of the show, I didn't actually spotlight you, which I'd love to do. If you can share how you work with people and what this process looks like for them.
Okay, yes. Well, what happens is we get very stuck in our story, and our story does matter. So this is not saying our story doesn't. I mean, my story I tell all the time. But nowadays, I can tell it from a place of open-hearted manageability rather than from extreme angst and overwhelm and vulnerability. So we all get stuck in our story. And when that story starts to define us, it starts showing us that this is who we are, and we can't see another side to that picture, to that story. Then we get stuck and distorted and feeling overwhelmed. There's a feeling of guilt and shame that we're not good enough. So what happens is when a person steps forward and says, I can't live another moment of this roller coastering, I'm feeling okay, and then I fall down into the dumps and life seems so overwhelming and too much to handle, and then I pull myself up from that, and then I step forward and brush myself down, and then down I go again. And we all do that to some degree, in some form, sometime in our lives. And we have times where we manage that roller coaster quite well, and other times where it's just too overwhelming. So we take that story and peel it away and go into what is actually happening, where the one-sided perception has become the truth, and where that person's become blocked, blinded from seeing the other side of the truth. So the sets of questions are very, very different. Often people will say, I've never had to answer a question like that. It feels so different. And then when they have a breakthrough, they go, I never thought about it that way. So the questions take them backwards and forwards to, in a sense, the pros, cons to whatever it is they've been stuck into one-sided perception about. And it takes them, okay, that's my perception, this is the other side. And the questions go backwards and forwards. And the most interesting thing is that it not only works on a conscious level, but it starts working unconsciously. So I'll often get a phone call from a client saying, you know, I've only had one session with you, and yet I've just had a conversation with great Uncle Harry, who I loathe and haven't spoken to in years. And if I've had 2 words in my lifetime, it's a lot. I've had a half an hour conversation where I was able to speak my truth from both sides of who I am, and speak without being feared of being judged, or them getting angry or ostracized, or me getting angry and wanting to ostracize them. I just spoke my truth, and I wasn't attached to whether they agreed with me or not, or how it went. I just knew it was my truth. And that's the thing that creates that inner peace we were talking about, where you can authentically speak your truth on a conscious and an unconscious level, because that what they did then after one session came out from their innate genius. In other words, when you can peel away the extreme, overwhelming distraction from overthinking and overfeeling, feeling to the extreme feelings, when you can peel away those two, suddenly you can access your inner wisdom to a point where it just comes out and you go, where did those words come from? That was so wise. They came from me. Because it's there, it's just blocked, blinded, and distorted from our extreme attachment to overthinking things through, or feeling over emotional.
Jenetta, are you available to help people now? Do you have any opportunities left for people to contact you?
I'm very aware of pacing myself out so that I'm not overly booked, but I do have space for people. There's always, I know when a person is ready, because there's that point where they reach me going, I cannot live another minute of this roller coaster of feeling okay, not feeling okay, feeling okay, not feeling okay. And I will do whatever it takes to get through it. Then they're ready to work with me. In fact, there are 2 types of people or client. The one is that they're comfortable being uncomfortable. So there's something within their pain that's serving them. It could be that they feel they matter when they're in pain, because people start listening or start reacting when they perceive they weren't being listened to or reacted to before. It might be that it gives them a label, that makes them matter. There are a whole myriad of reasons why one gets attached to whatever feels internally painful on an emotional, mental level. And when there's too much serving you in experiencing that pain, and you're in the perception that letting go of it means you lose all that support and those labels and you don't matter anymore, it's almost impossible to do this work. But when you get to a point where you go, I can't literally take another minute of being the way I am, I will do what it takes. That's where I got to that day I crossed the road and remembered I still had choice after losing Jenny, my daughter, to suicide. I thought I was stuck in this pain and this loss and this overwhelm and this grief for the rest of my life. And in that moment where I remembered I had choice, it enlightened me to remember there's more than one way of being. And I was prepared to find out what that was and work it. So the moment you are at that place where you can't take another moment, you're uncomfortable, feeling uncomfortable, it's too much, then you're ready for this process.
And how do people reach you?
I'm very approachable on the epiphanyprocess.com. There's Jenetta Barry and the Epiphany Process on Facebook. We're on Instagram, Jenetta_TEP, the Epiphany Process. Also, Twitter. You can message me in any which direction, but the easiest way is from the website, and it'll give you some more insight there too.
Thank you so much for another great show and sharing all of this really important information with me and with our audience as well. And thanks for the online coaching.
An honor and pleasure, as always, with you. Just love our energy we co-create.
I do as well. And I look forward to seeing you right after the show.
Wonderful. Lots of love. And to everybody out there, can't wait to see you again this time next week with lots of love in the meantime.
Namaste. All right. Thank you so much to everyone who's watching and listening. We really appreciate it. And thanks for spreading the word. We have more and more people coming to our channel. I just want to share with you, in case you missed the big announcement, that my second book, Adversity to Awesome, is available, paperback or ebook. This is a compilation of 12 chapters. And I have one chapter and there are 11 others by different authors. So please head over to Amazon, pick up your copy. This book is meant to inspire and bring hope as people take down the wall and share their story of something that happened to them in their life that they kept to themselves, in many cases like me. And now they've put it out there so that other people can walk into their light and be their own lighthouse. All right, that's all we have for right now. We'll be coming back with the United Kingdom news and culture. So please stay with us for that. That is at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time or 4 p.m. British Summer Time. We'll see you again soon. Bye.